Yo, let's take a look at using Redux in Ableton Live. So I'm working on this simple beat here. Every now and then I'm asked to do some beats for rappers and stuff like that. So I got something going. Let's listen to the hi-hat. I'm using Redux on the hi-hat, so you can hear the change, right? Listen to the hi-hat. Let's solo the hi-hat here. If you're interested in small audio changes and you're a nerd with audio, you are in the right place. If stuff like that is not your thing, you should look elsewhere. So this hi-hat here. So I was working on this beat, and I'm usually just trying to get like the palette of sounds should be something that they kind of work together. And I was using this hi-hat as a placeholder. And in trap, I mix trap pretty often, and the high and the tone and the level of hi-hat is something that I often end up discussing with the producers. And like, this is something I did myself, but I was listening to the hi-hat, and this is where I started. And if you want this really like kind of, actually a lot of trap producers have their hi-hats way too loud in mixing. So I don't know why, but if you want this like modern crispy hi-hat that's really just kind of in the background, this could totally work. But I often want something with a little character, and especially when it comes to my own music, people get in touch and they say that they like the tone that I do in my hip hop and drum and bass, because I'm trying to go for this slightly old and kind of gritty. Like, I don't want to go for this like super modern stuff. So I thought that maybe taking a look at this Redux thingy with this hi-hat is a good starting place to learn how Redux works roughly. So this is all clean. Let me actually also get the analyzer open here so we can maybe see something interesting. So, without Redux, it's looking like this. There's not to see here yet, but I'm going to use this with some other sounds. So, what is this Redux? Let me just duplicate it and keep this and restore this to the default settings. So, what is this rate? It's sample rate. If you've ever heard of sample rate, or let's say Nyquist audio theory, it means that sampling rate, for example, in the project, my sample rate here is 48,000 actually because of the video capture software that I'm using. It actually forces Ableton Live to go to 48,000. What it means, for example, you often have 44,100, and based on Nyquist theory, it means that you get half of the sampling rate as clean as a whistle. So when your sampling rate is 44,100, it means that you're getting 22,050 hertz of pristine, clear reproduction of audio. So this tool is bringing the sample rate down, and we can kind of see it if we look at it, and also, of course, you can hear interesting stuff happen. It gets much more lo-fi. So if we look at the info box in the lower left corner, it says sample rate. This sets the new sample rate that the signal is degraded to. So it's degrading the signal. It's making this signal a bit worse in a way. So I'm lessening the amount of frequencies in a way. But what's often kind of interesting with lessening the sample rate is aliasing. Aliasing, in a nutshell, it means that you're kind of forcing the audio to smaller sample rate, but often this kind of like a bit crap, shitty audio is happening as the result of this degraded sample rate. Let me actually use this Redux on this main melody that I have. So if you're not familiar with Redux, or I mean any tool that lessens the sample rate, this is how it sounds. You can hear this weird sheen type of happening at certain sample rates. And you can also see, let me actually just look at this without any... Let me pull it down. So in a nutshell, some of the audio gets kind of rebuilt in a way, or it's mostly like kind of like some leftover product of this sample rate reduction. So even though you're making the sample rate less, just like in a way, just like less space for the frequencies, there's still this like leftover stuff that can sound kind of interesting. So I was using Redux for the hi-hat because I knew that I could make it a little dirtier. I often use saturator and all kinds of distortion and saturation plugins, but I really think it works here. But you just gotta find the right spot, because if you go crazy, I mean, this could be something you want, but it just, I feel like I find the perfect amount of this dirtifying that makes the hi-hat just kind of nicely stick out. It's nice and clean here, but it becomes kind of more rowdy and more audible. And like I said, this is the small details, but I'm a mixing engineer, I'm also a producer, so this is what actually does interest me. Let me actually use Redux on the bass. And let's see what we can do, because you can get kind of, let's just let me also get the analyzer open here. So let me go crazy. So you're hearing now, especially now, you're hearing this added audio, whatever you want to call it, this kind of sheen, kind of sparkly, filthy. This can be used as a tool that adds some harmonics to your sound. But let's also see some of the other stuff. So jitter, listen, you actually should be using headphones for this, because to get kind of close to the sound, because there's something happening in the stereo field. That's kind of interesting. It says this adds noise to the resampling clock signal and introduces randomness to the downsampling process. It does sound kind of interesting. So let's look at these frequencies here, and you see a lot of harmonics just build up. And what's interesting here is now I'm setting the sample rate to 3000 hertz. So technically, if you think about it, there shouldn't be anything going above 3000 hertz. But if you look at what's happening at the analyzer, there's a lot of stuff above 3K. So this is the aliasing, right? So I could go even lower. Actually, let me pull the jitter down. So this is the pure aliasing, because sorry, earlier I was using this jitter that adds a little bit of like noise type of stuff. So I'm around 1.5K, but there's a crazy amount of this harmonics. The harmonics go really high, actually. They go up to 20K as far as we can see it, which is kind of crazy, thinking that you're actually reducing the sample rate to something this low. So some other controls here. You have the filter pre-filter. It says this enables a filter that precedes the resampling module and reduces aliasing. It means that it filters the sound before resampling. This can especially help with bright sounds, because if you have a really bright sound that has lots of frequencies going up to however high, especially those around those ranges, there's going to be a lot of this dirt aliasing, and this filter just filters some of those frequencies out before resampling happens, so it can help to smooth it out. Then you have post filter, which is you can use the filter after the aliasing, the sample rate reduction has happened. So you can kind of tame it if you want to. So you can use it as a filter. You don't have to, like sometimes I was adding a filter after this, but then I realized I don't have to. So especially with bass, it's kind of nice. You can get kind of dirty. I'm not saying that this sounds particularly amazing, but let me just flick these off. Or if you like that kind of Skrillex type sound, you could go with this type of thing, and you could even modulate this if you want to. But it's also good to see that you have this dry wet ratio. So now it kind of makes sense. You're adding a little bit of sheen. This sounds a little bit like SP12, SP1200, the classic sampler that adds this aliasing, but sometimes it's too much. So let me just, one last thing. Oh, by the way, you have this beat reduction setting here. And this is actually a very, very, very crazy thing. Listen to this. Technically, in a nutshell, the headroom gets way smaller. So it's being pushed into the headroom, and that adds another level of noise in a way. So it's mostly like pushing a lot of noise into the sound. That is crazy. We started with this. Obviously, this is way too much, but finding the right amount of dry wet and right amount of bit reduction and sample rate reduction can give you some useful results. I don't usually go like super crazy. I don't do the mega crazy bass, but I do like adding a little bit of dirt into the sound that kind of helps the sound to cut through. I could maybe try messing with this in context. Let's just listen, and let me go crazy first and then just kind of tame it. That's just way too much. You hear that? Anyways, you probably get the point. I don't always like super clean digital music. Even in mixing, I usually add a little bit of something there to kind of help the sounds to cut through the mix. So I think that is it. I hope you liked it. Use it as spice. Don't go crazy. Or hey, if you want to, do it. I hope it helps. Thanks.